So before we start, we should make a sound check. So please pay attention to the screen. Wrong language. English, please. Or you can just type plus into chat. Yeah. So are we good? Okay, so I guess everything's fine. Everybody can hear me. Hello again. My name is Mick. I'm from Technoton company. Grigory was on Friday, so today me instead of him. And today we are going to go through DUT-E GSM and DUT-S7 fuel level sensors. The interesting stuff about those sensors is that they do not use any additional devices for data transmission. But before we go into more details, let's just briefly go through the overview of all the fuel level sensors we have. So classic capacitive sensor, everybody know what is fuel level sensor and what features it has. One more device is a differential level sensor, which has additional electrode for measuring different types of liquids and making all the measurements accurate in case of any impurities or something like that in fuel. And today's topic are those two sensors on the right side, GSM, which is two-in-one device, and wireless sensor with Bluetooth. Again, before we go into more details, let's go through the main features common for all the devices made by Technoton for all the level sensors. I mean, signal filtration, it's a kind of averaging function which allows to avoid any jumps and drops on the fuel level chart, fuel level graph. This filtration is needed when the machine goes on some rough terrain and fuel fluctuates left and right, up and down inside the fuel tank. So to avoid those fluctuations on the graph, the signal filtration feature is used. You can configure it up to 300 seconds on almost all the models of level sensors. The next one is temperature correction. This one is important for regions where daily temperature fluctuations, day and night fluctuations are huge. For example, plus 30 in day and around 0 in night. Again, this feature helps to avoid any jumps and drops on a chart of fuel level. Then shortening and extending length of a probe. So as you see here, I have just a small level sensor, but it could be extended using additional elements like that. The extension is available up to 6 meters, which makes a sensor usable for stationary tanks up to 6 meters high. And of course, you can cut the length of level sensor. I guess many of you who install level sensors, when you come to the installation place, you have some, let's say, 1 meter long level sensor, and you need to install it to a fuel tank, which has just half meter height. So you can just cut it, make a configuration, and install it in the fuel tank. So it's kind of comfortable for installation guys who install the sensors to machines. And of course, bottom stop and screen filter, which is preventing fuel level sensor from moving left and right because of fuel tank vibrations. So bottom stop is just a spring which is fixed on the bottom of probe, and it makes installation more rigid. Then the screen filter, this one protects the tubes from mud and water, which gathers on the bottom of fuel tank. So the sensor can operate even in conditions when the fuel has some layers, fuel tank has some layers of mud or water on the bottom side or bottom part. So GSM level sensor. Well, many of you know that, many of you know that when it comes to installation of fuel level measurement system to a vehicle, you need one device to measures the level, and the one device to get the data and transmit it to web-based telematics service. So we have two devices. Each of the devices should be installed. You should connect them with wires. You should configure them. And if the devices are made by different manufacturers, each of them has its own service software, manuals. So it takes time and effort to make the installation properly. DET GSM is a two-in-one combo, level sensor and GPS tracker in a single device. So it looks like that, just like a regular level sensor, but it has GPS tracker inside and GSM modem. That device makes installation of fuel level measurement system quicker and easier for your installation team. You don't need to install two devices, just one. You don't need to configure two devices, just one. And of course, taking into account that device is just one, you don't need to be afraid of incompatibility or any other communication issues. So this level sensor measures the level inside the fuel tank, gets the GPS coordinates of object, and transmits data to a web-based server, or to email or SMS. We'll talk about it a bit later. So the functionality, the features of the sensors are explained by the technology used inside. The technology is called IoT Burger, and this technology allows maximum data processing on board. That means inside the level sensor. So the sensor itself can detect different kind of events like fuel draining or fuel tank refilling. It can be configured to detect the geo zones like geofencing. So if the object moves out of the zone, the sensor will send alarm, and many other features. So all the processing inside the level sensor is described by the technology used inside. The events I was talking about. So the sensor is able to detect different kinds of events, mainly, of course, connected to fuel, like if the truck or any machine where a fuel level sensor is installed was refilled at a gas station, the level, initial level, final level, and the volume of refill will be detected by the sensor and sent to a server or straight to the email inbox of Fleet Manager. Also could be sent as alarm via SMS to Fleet Manager or any other responsible person. There are other events which are detected by level sensor, like engine start, engine stop, beginning of movement, stop duration, so different kinds of events. You can also configure the event. I mean, if you need to detect some particular event, you just select the parameter which should be monitored and define the borders of the change of parameter. Report is a combination of 10 selected parameters. Reports are also configured inside the fuel level sensor. So later on, I will show you the service software which allows to do that. And the report contains 10 parameters. You also should select a trigger of a report. For example, fuel drain, or report could be sent on the schedule basis, each hour, each minute, once per day, once per week, probably, which is could be useful for stationary tanks. And up to 20 reports could be saved inside sensor's memory. So particularly, you can make like you can control like 200 different parameters which are measured by level sensor. So this is the software window which explains how the report is generated. As you can see, you should select some kind of event. In this case, it's a fuel discharge. Of course, the report should have a name. And in the bottom part of this screenshot, you'll see that different parameters are selected to be sent to a server. Also, you can tick email and SMS fields to send the reports to selected email addresses or SMS to selected phone numbers. Sending data over email and SMS. where it could be useful. Mainly, SMS is useful for alarms. For example, if a vehicle moves out of a geozone and you don't want it to go out, you configure the alarm, you get an SMS, and the fleet operator can react immediately, call the driver, and ask him to go back inside the zone. Email, sending data over email, reports or events which are sent through email means that you don't need any telematics server for receiving the reports. That means for some particular cases like diesel generators, stationary fuel tanks, or any other stationary machine, you don't need telematics service for receiving the data. So you configure email and you get the reports straight to your email. Those 20 reports, 10 parameters in each. Diagnostics and configuration. Since the level sensor, DUT GSM level sensor, is always connected to the internet, I mean, where you have network coverage, of course, you can access it remotely and check the conditions of operation. Is there any malfunctions? And adjust configurations if necessary. For example, you can adjust a calibration table for fuel tank, or you can change the configuration of reports, select different parameters, change email addresses or phone numbers. So almost any configuration could be done remotely. One more situation where it could be useful is if you have, let's say, a new technical guy in your team, and you send him to the installation place, and this person is not yet experienced enough to make all the configurations. The only job this person should do is physically install the level sensor inside the fuel tank, and then more experienced team member who is sitting inside the office can call a person and ask to make steps necessary for configuration. But the configuration itself will occur from office. So your more experienced team member will make all the configurations via the internet, and less experienced person will just follow the mechanical steps which are needed to do the configuration. And since the level sensor has a technology, IoT Burger technology inside, it's able to process the data from other sensors. I mean other Technoton sensors. So we can connect other devices like regular level sensors. For example, you have a truck with 2 fuel tanks. In left, you have a level sensor, DET GSM, and in the right, you have a level sensor, DET CAN. So this one on the right sends data to this one on the left, and DET GSM gets all the information, processes it, makes the reports, and sends them online. So in case of many tanks, in case of stationary machinery, let's say, have 5, 6, 16 fuel tanks, you need just DET GSM in one of them and the regular capacitive level sensor in all others. So DET GSM will act as a central point which gathers the signals from all the other sensors. Of course, it's possible to use DET GSM with flow meters. With any Technoton device which has CAN output signal. Also, DUT GSM sensor allows to receive signals from third-party units. Let's say you have kind of temperature sensor or a door sensor or anything else, and you want to connect it to DUT GSM. You can use a digital to analog converter to convert analog signal into digital one, which is understandable by a level sensor. And again, the level sensor will act as a central point, receiving the signals from all the other sensors within the network. We will now see the example here. It works on a vehicle. So you can see GSM level sensor inside fuel tank, and you can see flow meter and CAN bus reading device. So in this case, GSM sensor gets all the signals, all the data messages from other peripherals and sends the data online. So no external tracking device is needed for this kind of telematics system configuration. DUT-E GSM acts as a level sensor and as a GPS tracker at the same time. And here is an example, well, it's a kind of simplified example of how the level sensor with GSM can be used for a stationary machine, for a diesel generator. So the sensor is installed inside a fuel tank, and the flow meter is installed on the engine of diesel generator. Level sensor measures how much fuel is left inside a fuel tank, and flow meter measures the real fuel consumption of generator's engine. So the flow meter sends the data to level sensor, and level sensor transmits all the information to a web-based server or through the email using GSM network. One of the cases, well, had a project in the Philippines where our partner equipped construction machinery, those tip trucks and excavators with DUT GSM level sensor. And the interesting point of this project is that the area where machinery were working was not covered with GSM. So the level sensor was saving all the reports generated caused by different events like fuel theft or fuel tank refill, engine start stop, movement start, or engine switched off. So the level sensor was gathering all the reports inside its memory, and when the machine were inside the GSM network, the reports were transmitted to the web-based server. So the data is not lost. The data is saved inside sensor's memory, and as soon as the network is back on, the data is sent to the server. I can see several questions in chat. Let's do like that. As soon as I'll finish with the presentation, it will be like in 15-20 minutes. I'll answer all the questions typed by you to chat. So, short summary on DUT GSM sensor. First, it's a two-in-one device. That means I don't need any external tracking device for that kind of product. The device is able to measure the level, volume of fuel, and get the GPS position of machine and transmit all the data using GSM 2G or 3G networks. Flexible report generation. That means you can select what kind of data you want to send, what kind of events should be detected by a level sensor, where to send the information, how often you want to send it. Should it be on an event, I mean, when something happened, or should it be done on a schedule basis, each hour, for example, each minute? So it will allow you to, for example, reduce data traffic if you have this kind of task. And one more flexibility of this device is that when it goes out of the home network, I mean, it goes to roaming, the data transmission could be adjusted. I mean, you can send some of the reports, and the others will not be sent unless the machine comes back to the home network. So it saves money when the vehicle moves out of the country or some region. Remote diagnostics and configuration. So you can make all the adjustments to configurations remotely from the office, and it helps when the installation team has no time or has not enough experience to make all the configurations on site. Of course, it's also important if you want to make any changes later. For example, if during installation some small mistake was done, I mean, in configuration, and you want to change it to fix it, you can do it later on from the office. And operation via CAN S6, it's called S6 technology. Well, actually, you can see the technology here. This is the cabling system, like that, several cables, and different units are connected to this cabling system, and DUT GSM acts as a central unit. So in this example, telematics gateway is not needed. So we have a system like that without external tracker. DUT GSM gets the information from all the other units, from flow meter, from CAN bus reader, from digital to analog converter, from all the units connected to this kind of bus. Okay, so it was basic information on the DET GSM fuel level sensor, and now let's move on to totally wireless fuel level sensor. So as you can see here, no wires, nothing like that, but the device is able to measure the level of fuel inside fuel tank and send data to a receiver. So as you see, the product design is simple. It's a probe here, measuring head with all the electronics, PCB, and Bluetooth data device for sending data via Bluetooth. Main specifications, yes, when it comes to Bluetooth, this technology has a limited range of data transfer. Guaranteed data range is 20 meters when it comes to vehicles, because obviously vehicles have different metal barriers, body, frame. And if we are talking about open area, for example, fuel tanks standing at some gas station, the data range is bigger. It's 40 meters, but it's like guaranteed range. Of course, in practice, it could be longer. So our experiments shown us that real data transfer range in open area could be around 100 meters. Excuse me. Well, sensitivity of fuel level measurement is 0.1 millimeter. That means that any fuel change, any change in fuel level will be detected by the fuel level sensor. Even smaller, like little, almost invisible fuel drainings will be detected. Of course, from the other hand, it could influence the chart. I mean, how good it will be, how good it will look. But you can configure signal filtration on the server side and make the chart more smooth. Data transfer technology is a Bluetooth 4.x. It's called BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy. And actually that technology made available this kind of level sensors. The idea is that BLE requires less power for sending data. And that allowed us to put a small battery inside sensor's head and make the sensor's lifetime at least 5 years. Just imagine the situation 5 years ago or 7 years ago. It was not possible because BLE modules were too expensive. And just a couple of years ago, they became affordable, and that allowed us to make this kind of sensor. Sensor extension possibility is up to 6 meters, so that makes the sensor usable for stationary fuel tanks. Of course, you can also cut it, so it's a common feature of all the level sensors by Technoton. You can cut it as you need, and you can extend it up to 6 meters. Here on the slide, you can see that we have also other units which share this kind of technology. It's called S7 technology. It's based on BLE standard. That means you can use hardware for vehicle telematics, for machinery telematics, without any wires. So the sensors will be powered from its built-in battery, and they will send data through Bluetooth. What is so special about the S7 technology is that it works in so-called BLE radio mode. That means that the devices like level sensors or flow meters or axle load sensors, they send data regardless of is there any receiver in the area. The idea is that when you need to pair the devices, there is a risk of disconnection of the units. In case the units are disconnected, it becomes, well, kind of tricky to make a connection again. So there's a risk that the vehicle will be moving somewhere outside, let's say, the highway, and the data transmission, data connection between level sensor and GPS tracker will be lost. So some other Bluetooth sensor will be not ever able to reconnect to the tracking device, and that means that the vehicle is moving without any fuel control, fuel monitoring, or any other type of monitoring. Level sensors, DUT GSM level sensor works in BLE radio mode. That means the signal is transmitted all the time, and there is no need of pairing the device with a tracking unit. The data is sent like in radio, actually, radio principle. So it sends the data all the time while battery is working. And it also allows to use several receivers. For example, tracking device, smartphone, tablet, display with BLE. So several devices will be receiving the data from the same sensor. It would not be possible if it would require any kind of pairing. That's why we do not use any pairing. So yeah, here is actually information on BLE radio. Yes, the signal is transmitted all the time. No device pairing is needed. And BLE allows to use the battery inside the head for 5 years of continuous operation, at least 5 years. Well, what is also important about wireless sensor is that obviously they don't have any wires. And if you don't have any wires, that means you don't need to make any connections, and they don't have a risk of well, intentional or occasional wire damage. Also, if you don't have any external power, that means that this sensor is fire and explosion safe. If you don't have any external power, you don't need any additional units for like spark protection. So the sensor is actually has certificate for explosion safety. We'll see it a bit later. And of course, less time needed for installation. So we don't have cables, we don't need to lay cables. We just install the sensor, make the configurations, and just hold on. You just make configurations on the receiver side, and that's it. The sensor works, sends the data, receiver gets the information, and it's transmitted to the web-based server. So here is an example of how different users can receive information locally. Here you can see the driver who can use the mobile app, smartphone app for checking the data, how much fuel is left inside the fuel tank, how much fuel was filled, or if any kind of draining occurred. So some kind of additional application of this app is that it could be used as a night watchman for helping driver at the parking lot, for example. The other person, let's say fleet inspector, can check the data, how much fuel left inside a fuel tank when the vehicle is transferred between several drivers. Imagine some delivery company, a small delivery company which has several vehicles, many drivers who transfer vehicles between each other, and they need to fill those paperwork. So fleet inspector or driver can check how much fuel is left inside the fuel tank and fill in this line in this report, in this paperwork. Stationary tanks. As I said, the sensor is fire and explosion proof, so it could be used in big stationary tanks. In this kind of example, you see that there are several level sensors and tracking device which gets the information from all those level sensors and sends data via 2G or 3G or Wi-Fi to the server. So several fuel tanks are installed. Several fuel tanks are standing and level sensors are installed inside, and the tracking unit receives the information from all those sensors and transmits it online. So here is this fire explosion proof certification. And finally, we are going to, we have one more slide. Compatibility with tracking devices. Well, actually, let's move to the next slide. That's what all the time is ringing here. Is a mobile app, smartphone app, actually on a tablet currently, which allows to gather information from the level sensor. All the time while I'm speaking, it shows me that the fuel tank is empty. It sends me alarms that fuel tank is empty. Obviously, it's empty because the level sensor is in the air. So, well, here how it looks. The mobile app, smartphone app, allows to first make the configurations or make a configuration profile for the fuel level sensor, and it allows to save the profile and share it with other devices. Here we can see a main dashboard which shows what is the current fuel level inside the tank. This dashboard could be used by a driver or mechanic to write down the current remaining fuel volume in tank. Also, here are the calibrations calibrations for profile for this particular sensor. So, as you understand, all the configurations happens on the receiver side, not on the fuel level sensor side. Here you can configure what kind of events you want to get alarms for. For example, fuel discharge, fuel tank refilling, low or high temperature, low fuel level. Here is a calibration table. It's like the same as you use on the monitoring on the telematics server, but it's saved inside fuel sensors, inside a receiver's memory. So that one allows the driver or mechanic to see what is the current fuel volume in liters inside a fuel tank. By the way, here's an example of event just popped up. Example of event fuel tank refilling. So it shows what was the initial level, what was the final level, and what is the fuel volume. It could be useful when the driver, let's say, is not certain about the amount of fuel received at a gas station, and by comparing the values inside the app and inside the cash receipt, the driver can decide if he was given the real amount of fuel he paid for. And one more feature is fuel theft alarm. Fuel theft alarm is useful when the driver is having a rest at night, parking lot. Here it looks like that. And the sound, well, you can make it louder if you need. It's useful when the driver is having a rest, sleeping, and suddenly some, well, not good person, let's say, approaches and tries to steal fuel from truck's fuel tank. So this alarm will notify driver, and driver can react, call police or call for help. So no fuel theft will occur. Actually, that's how it looks like. Oh, I'll already shown it to you on the screen of the tablet, but here you can see it on the presentation slide 2. So a small summary before we start Q&A session. Small summary, just brief. BLE radio operation mode, which is used by DUT GSM level sensor, ensures that the data, the connection between the sensor and the tracker will not be lost. So no pairing occurs, no risk of disconnection. The sensor sends data all the time, regardless if there are any receiver nearby. By the way, the number of receivers is unlimited. Well, it's limited by the physical area which can fit all the receivers. It could be dozens, hundreds, thousands of receivers in an area of up to 100 meters. No signal wires, no power wires, no external power means that the installation happens quicker. It requires less time, less efforts, and it allows to use sensor in explosion hazardous areas like huge fuel tanks, because the sensor has no external power. There is no risk of spark occurrence. Fuel tank monitor is a smartphone or tablet app which could be used by a driver or by mechanic to get the live data locally when the situation requires, for example, at gas station or at parking lot, or when the vehicle is transferred between several drivers. So now we can move to questions and answers. You can type it, you can type it directly to chat or in Q&A mode. You can see it like a question sign in a blue round. The first question is, how is the GSM powered? A GSM sensor is powered from onboard network of vehicle. The cable, you can see it here. So there is a connector, and the sensor is delivered with the counterpart. So you just put plus and ground, you connect it to vehicle's network, electrical network, and that's it. So it's powered from onboard. Yes, we provide a description of data transfer protocol, so you can integrate it with your server. Actually, the data transfer protocol is called Violon IPS, so if it's already integrated with your tracking platform, you can use this sensor straight away. Yes, it's saved in a cell phone. In your case, actually, the configurations or configuration profile of the sensor of DUT S7 sensor is saved on the receiver side, either telematics unit or smartphone or tablet or any other receiving device. You make, for example, if we're talking about fuel tank monitor app, you make a calibration profile, you save it, and then you share with other devices where you need to get data. So you don't need to repeat all the configurations. You make it once and just share the profile with all of the other receivers, smartphones, tablets, as many as you want. Yes, we have our cloud platform where you can send data from DET GSM, or if you want to use the S7 sensor with our telematics gateway. Yes, we do have platform. Let me, well, I'll type it here. Actually, I don't remember the exact address. I guess it will be like that. Anyway, this webinar chat is recorded, so after the webinar, I will transfer all those questions and commentaries to our team who's responsible for customer care, and they will contact you with more detailed information. I mean, pricing, if you are interested, all the commercial relations, so they will contact you with more details. Well, yes, you in configurations of DET GSM server sensor, you enter the address where you want to send the data. You should use a port, so it's HTTP. You use a port address. You put their server name. So yeah, it could be sent to your cloud platform, and in parallel, you can send it through email and via SMS. So those features are not excluding each other. They could be used in combination altogether at the same time. Flow meters. Well, actually, it's a good question. On Wednesday and Friday, we'll have webinars dedicated to flow meters. So please join us on Wednesday and Friday to learn more about DFM and DFM marine flow meters. But as for now, it's not recommended to use a flow meter for water. You can use it for fuel, for oil, like heating oil, but not for water, because water have different properties. And the flow meter will not work for a long time, I would say. The wear out will be too quick. So the flow meter is used for fuel and fuel-alike liquids like heating oil, marine oil, all that kind of liquids. Liquefied natural gas. I'm not sure about this kind of application of the level sensor. I need to ask our technical team. Anyway, Hussein, we will contact you after the webinar, after we have some information from technical team, and we'll discuss is it possible to use on LNG or not. On-off button. No, there is no on-off power button, because otherwise the driver or any other person who is interested in switching off the level sensor would do that. So there is no button. And when it comes to battery lifetime, when the sensor is in the warehouse, it's switched off. You will switch it on before the installation. There is a small procedure on how to do that. It's described in details in our product manual. So you can download manual and check how it's done. But in a couple of words, you just, let's say, touch the tubes and put magnet in here for 15 seconds, I guess, and the sensor goes live, goes online. So it switches on. And from that point, you cannot switch it off. So it will work for as long as the battery is alive. Mobile fuel storage tank without any power source. I guess, you will need anyway any kind of power source. It could be additional battery, like you use in your personal car. It doesn't need to be a complicated electrical network system of a truck. You can use just a battery and put the wires of the DUT-E GSM sensor on it. Or you can use a wireless fuel level sensor and some external device which has built-in battery, those which are used for asset tracking. They could be, if they're compatible with DET-7, they could be used for getting the signal and transmitting it online. So there is no way anybody can connect to DET-7 level sensor. As I was saying, it uses BLE radio mode. So the sensor sends the data all the time, and the data is processed on the receiver side. So your smartphone or tracking device is a unit which gets the signal and processes it and then sends online. So there is no way anyone can get inside DET-7's configurations. Actually, neither you nor any third party can do that. So that's the idea of why we use BLE radio. First, you cannot. There is no risk of disconnection, and second, nobody can access the sensor because the sensor sends the data just one way. No, we cannot use alternating current. It should be DC power. DC power from 10 to 50 or 60 volts. I just don't recall exactly. But you should use DC power. And if you have just AC, you should use some converter AC to DC. Maximum length of cable Well, actually, you can make it like up to 100 meters, actually, but the standard one is 7.5 meters. There is no batteries inside GSM sensor. I suppose you mean S7, which is a Bluetooth sensor. No, the battery could not be replaced. We did it intentionally to make the head protected from any moisture or dust or anything. So it's like sealed. It's like solid sealant inside. And if there will be design which allow to change battery, this kind of sealing would be not not tight, I would say, and that would make a risk of moisture or sand or dust getting inside. So we don't have a replaceable battery because the sensor's head is sealed and tight. What data format is used? I suppose that's a question about data transfer protocol description. If you are interested in integration of data from DUT GSM level sensor, please contact us and we'll discuss how we could share with you the protocol description. Well, actually, nothing complicated in that protocol. As far as I know, there are already like around 10 companies who already integrated DUT GSM data protocol, including Teltonika, for example, one of the biggest players on the tracking devices market, Quacklink, and there are many companies who already did that. So if you want to join the club, feel free to contact and we will discuss it. Battery life, no, it's not yet done in a mobile app. So a battery, well, it will show you when it's like below 10%. You cannot see what is the current remaining charge of battery, but you will see that less than 10% remaining. Receivers of data. Restrict receivers. Well, actually, if the receiver has no, how we do that? We have let's say we have a tracker, and inside the configuration of the tracker, you usually configure those devices, let's say by network address or any other way from which you want to get the data. So usually when we have, let's say, 15 sensors and one tracking device, which should receive data only from 5 of those sensors, we save in trackers configurations network addresses of those 5 sensors. And that's how the tracker will ignore the remaining 10 units. But in fact, if you don't have configurations for the sensors you don't need to get the signal from, the tracker will not recognize the signal and will not send anything online. So it could be in 2 ways. But usually it's done through defining a list of allowed network addresses. Each sensor sends its own serial address, which is used like for identification. And that's how you can make the white list of allowed devices. I don't see the question. Sensor tampering. Could you please clarify what do you mean like tampering? If someone puts magnet or something like that on its top, nothing will happen. Nothing will change. The level sensor will still continue to measuring and sending data. If you mean like someone is trying to damage the sensor, Well, if you don't receive the data from the sensor for a long time, like let's say several minutes or hour, that means that the sensor is not working. And anyway, you will need to make a visual inspection of what happened to the sensor. If someone tries to block the signal, wireless signal, again, if it happens several times at the same place, let's say, obviously that's the signs of tampering attempt. But there is no other ways of defining this kind of interference into sensor operation. Well, actually, it should be any non-conductive liquid, like water, which conducts electricity, and the diesel fuel. Well, actually, it also conducts electricity, but in much less degree. So, in real life, the sensor is usually used with diesel fuel, with heating oil, with this kind of, let's say, oil products, light oil products like that. No, the data is not encrypted. If you need that feature for some project, again, let's discuss it, because there are different ways of encryption, and we can discuss this kind of project after the webinar tomorrow, today, as you wish. So we still have some time for questions, so feel free to ask, type it in chat, and we'll still have some time, 8, 9, 10 minutes. Actually, I don't know the question. Could you clarify, what do you mean? What kind of interference you mean? Also, I see one more question in chat regarding digestive materials. No, we don't have any sensor for digestive materials. It's slightly different market. Level sensors we make are mainly for machinery application, and machinery usually uses diesel fuel for operation. Well, actually, it will not work with water. I mean, when the sensor gets inside water, when the probe, the tubes, got inside water, short circuit happens. So the sensor will show you unrealistic values, and you cannot calibrate it on site. You cannot calibrate it on site for operation with water. Theoretically, it could be done at factory, but again, as I said, our products are used for machinery, for diesel fuel. Anyway, let's discuss your project with water in details and see what we can figure out. I mean, like memory, to store the data in memory. Well, it could be done, I guess. All the possibilities of the device are limited by the battery. If we want to make more features, we need either bigger battery, or the battery technology should be better. You see, it's like related to all those electric cars, which are also limited by batteries. The same applies to a level sensor, wireless level sensor. The battery is a limit, is a frame which not allows us to make more features as of today. But yeah, in the next versions, it could be that we will make more storage capacity, and it will save some reports or events inside. No, there is no external antenna, and actually there is no, well, for vehicles, there is no need for external antenna. All the projects we had with the GSM level sensor were successful without using any external antennas. The signal was transmitting without any issues. So in case of, as I was giving you an example, if the sensor or the vehicle is outside the GSM network coverage, the data is stored inside, so it's not lost. And as soon as the GSM network is back, the sensor will push all the data to the server. So probably your question is related to some kind of underground applications. Well, in this case, we recommend to use simple capacitive DUT level sensor and the tracking device or telematics gateway like that one on somewhere on the surface above the ground. Well, that's a good question, actually. We don't have any recommendations yet, but more and more these kind of questions are received by our customer care department. So yeah, I guess we'll think of some kind of repeater or this kind of device for extending the length of data transmitting range. But for now, well, the only option is to place the receiver closer than 40 meters. But well, actually, I made a small experiment myself, by myself. I was trying to understand what is the data range within a building, and I left a sensor on my table and went 2 floors above my office, and actually it was working. So it's not 40 meters, of course, but still those, hard floors, which are, well, pretty tough obstacle for a transferring signal, were not a problem for the sensor to send the data for around 20 meters. So probably it will work in your project. Again, we should discuss it in more details to see how far is it from the receiver. Petrol and diesel. Yes, you can use a level sensor, DUT-S7, not the GSM one, but S7 could be used for flammable liquids for petrol because it has explosion protection and fire safety protection. As I said, no external power, no additional spark protection units are used, and also have a certificate which allows us to use the sensor in zero zone, so which is the highest risk one. Data storage period. The memory of the DET GSM sensor is measured not in days, but in the amount of reports. 2G model has 65,000 reports capacity. That means if you generate reports, let's say once per hour, then you have 65,000 hours of no network operation. If you send the data each second, then just 65,000 seconds. So capacity is 65,000 reports, and it depends on how do you configure the report sending. More reports generated, less period of this kind of autonomous operation. Less reports generated, more time the sensor can work without the network. It's just simply through the wire if you do it locally. If you need to make the configurations during the installation, you connect the sensor to the service adapter, small black box, or I don't have it here, I guess. No, I don't have. So you connect the sensor using a small service box, and then to USB port of your PC or laptop, and you run the service software, which could be downloaded from Technoton website. and you make all the configurations. If we are talking about remote configuration, you send the SMS, so the sensor goes online into like admin or configuration mode, and then again you do everything through the service software, but remotely. Yes, it's well received. It was tested by us. Well, actually, it sends signals fine from the trunk of personal car, even covered with additional layers of steel. So it will send the data. It will get the GPS signal and send the data pretty good. Also, one of the projects we had is a DUT GSM sensor on a construction machine. Actually, you've seen it in a presentation. It was tipper trucks and excavators, which obviously have many metal structures on it. And the sensor just needs some, we call it like window, so a short angle for receiving the signal and sending the data online. If it has at least some small angle, it will send the data and receive GPS signals without any troubles. Can crocodile suddenly? Well, I'm not sure about the Dell gateway. I have not seen the specifications of this device, but let's put it like that. If a Dell gateway has CAN 2.0 port, CAN Crocodile will send the signals, because CAN Crocodile has no processing inside. It just sends everything it gets from the CAN bus. And the processing task of signal processing is on the receiver side, in a Dell gateway side in this case. Interface converter, well, if the device is not able to parse the messages, then it will need a converter. Otherwise, if this device is able to understand and parse the messages from CAN bus, you can use just Crocodile to get the signals in a safe, contactless way. Signal performances. Could you please clarify the question? Let's move to the next one, and Hafiz will clarify that one. Yes, yes, we will make a short poll in the very end of the webinar, and those who will choose the option yes will get the link to a video, to the recording of the webinar and to the presentation which was shown during the webinar. Is there any other question we have? Possibility to the field data from CAN bus system was required to use meter. First is that fuel data in CAN bus is not measured but calculated. Okay, as I said, we'll have webinars on Wednesday and Friday, but I will answer a question now. So you might probably know how those car makers estimate the fuel consumption of vehicles. You know, when you see this beautiful ad, when the car moves on the highway, beautiful mountain road or a forest road or something, and in the very end of the ad, they say, like, let's say 10 liters or 9 liters consumption of fuel in combined mode. In fact, this consumption is measured inside a lab when there is no wind, when there is no passengers inside, and they make the calculations, in fact, for ideal situation. And the same works for trucks. Fuel consumption data inside a CAN bus is done on calculations basis. So the engine control unit knows how much fuel should be sprayed through the nozzle, and the control unit knows what was the duration of opening the nozzle. So this one multiplied by that one, and that's the result of fuel consumption. That's how it works in CAN bus. The fuel flow meter measures the fuel rate, which is real, which goes through the hoses of the fuel system. So CAN bus is a calculation-based method, and the flow meter is measuring tool. That's the difference. One more example is when the data is not available. Well, it is available, but it's corrupted. Recently, we had a project where the data in CAN bus, the total fuel used counter was corrupted. It was showing kind of dozens of millions of fuel used by a bus, which is not obviously possible. And in that case, the data was not usable, even it was available for reading. So flow meter is the only option how you can get the real fuel consumption in that case. I guess you will see more difference on the webinar on Wednesday and Friday. BLE and GSM signal performance if placed inside container truck. Okay. Well, as I said, DUT-E BLE sensor in a situation when we talk about vehicles, so several metal walls, cabin, and those covers, shields of fuel tanks. In that case, it will work for 20 meters. GSM, the same. GSM will be working in case of container. It will be working fine. But if you have a vessel with several containers, one by one, like one on the top of the other, of course it will not work and you will not get GPS signal. But if we are talking about truck and the fuel level sensor installed in truck's tank, even if there are any container on the top, it will work fine and it will transmit the data. Okay, guys, I guess it was the last question for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And as I already announced, on Wednesday and Friday, we will have flow meter webinars. On Wednesday, you will learn about the flow meters for trucks, for smaller construction vehicles with up to 600 liters per hour flow rate. And on Friday, we'll tell more about the bigger applications, flow meters up to 27,000 liters per hour. So please join us on Wednesday and Friday. We'll be waiting for you. And well, stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you on Wednesday and Friday. Thank you. Bye.